Welcome to the Nairobi Health Show, everybody. Today I've got Meredith Oke. Meredith, thanks for coming on the show.
Pleasure, Dave. It's great to be here. Your podcast is wonderful. Thanks for putting it out in the world. How many people have you
Thank you
interviewed
so
now, do you
much.
think?
180-ish.
Wow. You must be
It's
a
been,
repository of wisdom.
I'll tell you what, it's changed my life. I thought when I started this podcast that I knew a lot about health and I was going to share and help other people come up to my level. And I've been humbled, right? And learned all this stuff I don't know. And although I was happy, you know that saying, you don't know what you don't know?
Yeah.
I was happy with my health before I started the podcast, but I've had so many insights. I've learned so many things. I've made so many personal changes. And so, and eaten the humble pie of, you don't know near as much as you think you do.
It's so true. It's so true. Yes. And that's a great way to put it. I think interviewing people, it keeps us humble and stops us from fixing on one particular way of doing things or way of thinking.
Absolutely. And that's so important too. And I'm really interested in that whole topic of how we change our minds, how we change our beliefs, which is even worse. And that's a whole area that really interests me because people get zealous in their beliefs about health. And I love Tim Ferriss's comment that we should have strong beliefs, but loosely held.
Lovely. That's beautiful.
Yes. Yeah. And so that's the way I'm trying to live it out is, hey, this is what I currently think. And I'm pretty passionate about my plan, but I'm also open enough to know that it could be better, or I could still be open to some big changes in the future. So anyways, sounds like you think along the same train of thought.
Yeah, definitely. And where my path has taken me is to like this kind of new area of science. And so there are, everyone in established science, except for a small number of people, are like, no, that is not possible, right? What you're saying cannot be true. And yet it is. So it's like bridging that gap of really moving through into like the quantum biologic view of
Okay.
of
So you might challenge some of our beliefs today. So for those of you listening, hey, this is what we want to do. We want to take off our cap of dogmatism and put on our hat of humility. And generally speaking, that's just a good idea in all areas of life. But let me read for those of you watching Meredith's bio. Meredith Oke is a leader in the quantum health revolution, a light therapy advocate, and a mother. Meredith is the co-founder of quantumhealth.tv, the world's first video streaming channel focused on decentralizing health education, where medical experts break down the emerging science of circadian health and quantum biology. And Meredith, there's much more we could say about you and your background, but I'd rather hear more from you. So summarize how you arrived at this point and doing what you're doing.
So, Dave, I started this journey just as somebody who was trying to feel better. I had chronic fatigue. I have 3 children, and one of them had continuous digestive issues. And, it was just a continuous search of doctors and naturopaths and this and that of like just sort of trying to get to a place of equilibrium. And I was saved by the fact that like I really I'm not a good cook and I'm not great with food.
Okay.
So when I was confronted sort of year after year with the idea that if you just micromanaged your food well enough and you just eliminated the right things and ate, and did it, then your issues would be fine. And I was willing to do that to a certain extent, but at a certain point it started to make me feel a bit hopeless because that's not something I enjoy. It's not something I'm good at. It felt like drudgery. And so I hit a place where I was like, there must be something besides food and supplements, which was very helpful and very important. But I was like, please, like there must be something else I can focus on. Because if this is it ad nauseum, my child at the time was only 10. Like this is a long road. And I came across the idea that light was just as important, if not more important to our health than food. And I was like, what? So the curious rebel in me decided to explore that, and and like at a very basic human level, it just gave me something else to do besides figure out my like fat to protein ratios and all that kind of stuff, right? Like it just gave me
Yeah.
something else to focus on. And the more I dug in and the more I learned, the more it was like, oh my gosh, this is crazy. But it was the information, it was like 3 hour long podcasts and 2 hour long talks and very densely written blog posts by some brilliant people, but it was hard work. And I started my career in the media, and then I became an executive coach. So my thinking is very much like, how do people take in information and process it and make it actionable? So as a COVID project, my husband and I, he's in marketing, we just created this education platform for people to learn about light and health more easily.
Okay. And it's really interesting because the very last guest I interviewed was a medical doctor who talked about light in the most basic sense. Like he said, what are carbohydrates? Well, the plants, on our planet take light and convert it into chlorophyll, which is stored as sugars, which become carbohydrates. And it's super interesting to think that way. I'm really interested in light. Do you know Rowdy Nassif?
I do. I know him well. Yeah.
Yeah, I thought you would, being in that industry. I've interviewed him, by the way.
Oh, fantastic. Yeah,
Yeah,
Rude was brilliant on this. Yeah.
He is, and super interesting. And it's really interesting to me. I mean, it's one of those things we don't think about because we take it for granted. The sun comes up, it shines on us. That's wonderful. We love sunny days. We all understand about, the processes of biology where light is converted into, how plants do their thing, photosynthesis, etc. But because it's kind of out of our control, we can control our carb intake. We can control a lot of things. So we just don't think about light very much. And then also quantum physics, I suppose we would say, tells us that at the very root of our very cells is what we think of as matter is actually just energy, right?
Yeah.
And so those are just some ideas I have. I'm not an expert on them, but it sounds like these types of ideas, this area, is what you started exploring to solve your family's health issues, right?
Yes, exactly. And we did it because we were doing it not in an academic approach, but for our own personal health. We did it in a very practical way. So we went outside more often. We're like, oh, we feel better, right? We bought blue blockers and put them on after the sun went down, and we're like, oh, we're sleeping better, right? And so it was a very practical sort of approach where we just did these things, noticed the effect, and then we would go back and be like, okay, so why is that happening? And then we would go and track down a podcast or a research to find out what exactly was going on that was creating that result. Because it feels kind of magical, right? Like it feels like like is it really this straightforward? Like I wake up in the morning and make sure that the first light that hits my eyes is outside instead of inside, and my whole day has changed. It's like a 5-minute thing that costs nothing. It's available all the time, even if it's cloudy. Like you're getting a benefit. So it almost feels like this can't be real, right? And then you go down, and as you just very beautifully simplified the science, that it's all happening at an energetic level, and the light frequencies program the cells in our body, and the light frequencies change throughout the day. So if we expose our eyes and our skin to those light frequencies on a natural rhythm, our bodies are being programmed to do what they're supposed to do.
Interesting. And so this topic has come up like sporadically throughout my podcast. Dr. Jack Kruse, who talks about cryptocurrency and direct to consumer delivered medical care and a variety of outside the box methods of thinking. One of his last comments was, Get outside more, see the sunrise and see the sunset. Simple advice, right?
Yeah.
And so you started to pick up on these ideas and you started to wear the blue blockers.
Mm-hmm.
And where did it go from there?
So it was a gradual improvement in the health of every member of our family, even as you were saying in the beginning, people who didn't, my husband and my other children who we didn't think had any health problems. Everyone just started to feel better, and we started to organize our lives a little bit more around the sun, right? So it wasn't just, it wasn't something we were fitting in. It became kind of the basis for how we lived. And there's a great app. It's called D-Minder. And you download the app and it like geolocates you and tells you where, and tells you like what the sun is doing based on where you are in the world at that moment. Because the sun, one of the many benefits of the sun is the production of vitamin D, right? But you don't get that all year round when you're at a high latitude. So this app tells you when you're in your vitamin D window, what time of day, that kind of thing. So I downloaded this app. We were living in France near Paris. So it was quite a high latitude. And I think it was sort of the end of October. I downloaded this app and it was like working, figuring out where I was, calculating things. And it said, your next vitamin D opportunity is in 144 days. Like, what?
Right. So cool. Like, fun.
Oh, okay. So maybe we could go somewhere.
Maybe we'll just all be depressed until then.
Yeah. So we, now we try to budget and schedule a trip somewhere warm to just kind of top up and get closer to the sun during the winter. Cause we have like such a deep understanding of, it's not strictly necessary to you can stay healthy at a high latitude, but it does help if you're able to do something like that. So we went down to Mexico. We were there for almost 2 weeks, and I made my grumbling children get up every morning and watch the sunrise. And one of the things that watching the sunrise does is, aside from like turn your brain on and get it ready to have a day instead of a night, it also preconditions your skin. So you end up with like a natural SPF of like 15 just from being under the sun, in the sun. So on that trip, we did an experiment where I didn't put any sunblock on the children. And I said, when you get that feeling like kind of tight and tingly and like you feel like you might be burny, go in the shade, get out of the sun. So we did that for the whole trip. We didn't use sunblock one time and no one burned. It was like, what? This is not what I was told is possible.
And how long were they getting exposed per day under that
regimen? So they were in the sun a lot of the day. We were a little more careful, like at high noon and things like that. But so and some there were times where they would be swimming and they were out there for a really long time. But they would go in the shade, cool down, feel a little better, and then go back out for 30, 40 minutes at a time. But again, we were watching the sunrise and we did it gradually. So we didn't go in the noonday sun straight away. Like you do want to be a little bit careful if you've gone.
For sure.
Yeah.
It takes your body time to adjust to anything, no matter how well you're doing it. Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah. But 30 to 40 minutes in Mexican sun can burn most people. Like that's, most people would use sunblock to protect from that.
Yes. And we, you can see we all have Northern European ancestry. So we do burn. But when we did it, when we paid attention and did these protocols carefully and paid attention to our body's signal that we were starting to burn, you start to feel that like kind of pink feeling. Yeah. Yeah. You get out and then that is one thing with all this information. It's important to say that you do want to avoid burns. Burning's not helpful, but other than that, there is really no downside to being outside as much as possible. All it does is improve your health in every way. It's like so crazy.
I think that's a wonderful takeaway. This is completely anecdotal, and this is just the world according to Dave. But during COVID, we have seen massive negative consequences throughout the country. And one of the big ones is murder rates going up in cities. And so much more violence. And we don't see that uptick anywhere but big cities, which I think is really interesting. And people in big cities are disconnected from nature. They're often not living in harmony with their circadian rhythm, that the clock doesn't change all year round as far as when they go to work and what they do. And, it's different for me. I work my own hours, and I have a dog that her and I are outside when the sun comes up every day. That's just naturally, I never planned on that. That's just the way it works, right? Because it's not by the clock. I don't set an alarm clock to wake up in the morning either. I just wake up when my body's ready to wake up, or when she starts barking. Sometimes her circadian rhythm runs the show. And then we're out the door, and we have half an hour out in farmland and wetlands and sun coming up. And I walk her again in the evening. And these are natural things that I've done. And after interviewing light experts like yourself, it's been cool to go, oh, that's kind of interesting. Like, that's a natural thing that's occurred for us. But I look at these people in high stress jobs inside of buildings under unnatural light all day, maybe not seeing the sun or a park or anything. And again, why do we see such a difference between people in big cities and people out in the country? Like, politically, we see this, right? Like, there's people can't even understand each other or talk to each other. And much of that conflict is actually, when you look at it, the difference between the concrete jungles and the real jungle, right? There's some huge difference in how people act, their level of anger, hate, frustration, whatever. So anyways, it's something I've been thinking about. There's such a high level of negativity that's actually playing out in crime.
Yeah.
At the moment.
I mean, Dave, it's a real thing. And the people think about circadian rhythm and like, oh, maybe it'll help me sleep better or whatever. But going outside in the morning and then periodically throughout the day and then blocking artificial light at night regulates everything, including dopamine and serotonin. So if you are living an indoor lifestyle and you don't have access to the outside, or you look at your phone first thing in the morning and your phone last thing before you go to sleep, you've short-circuited your ability to produce the hormones that keep you sane and happy. Like, you literally don't have them. And then maybe you go to the doctor and they put you on a pill that's meant to be, right? Like, like we recently moved and we rented a house that faces east, and we're up on a hill. So I've been getting morning sunlight like I never have before in my life. And when that light hits my eye, I feel like a physical tingling. Like, I used to drink. I don't drink anymore, but I used to drink. And then I would have that first drink and I'd be like, oh, it's like, I feel so relaxed and so good. I now feel like that watching the sunrise, right? Like, it's
interesting.
It's, causing my body and my mind to feel alive in a way that that does not happen when we're inside. And so if you live a life completely disconnected from that, absolutely, I think your theory has a ton of validity. Like, it will short circuit the brain's ability to self-regulate and to feel good and to connect.
So what else? You've mentioned some really great habits already that people could adopt. Blue light blockers in the evening, trying to be outside and see the sunrise. One of the things Rowdy pointed out is it's not about so much the skin exposure. A lot of it has to do with your eyes. So in the winter, you can go outside bundled up, and as the sun comes up, this benefit and the hormonal changes and all the good things that are happening, much of that, you don't have to take your shirt off, right? In the winter, winterscape, right?
Yeah.
And to get that vitamin D or whatever, or those hormonal balances, or the serotonin, dopamine. And so this really is, which I think is liberating, because I always thought that the sun benefits really were higher when more of our skin was exposed, like to get vitamin D or whatever. And it's fascinating that some of these studies done on like construction workers in India, for example, near the equator, wearing nothing more than like a construction loincloth, really.
Yeah.
Some of them are vitamin D deficient, right? Vitamin D is a very interesting thing. Now, that's not common, but vitamin D is not 100%.
If they were wearing sunglasses, they may have been messing it up.
Right. Isn't that interesting?
Yeah.
So it's really just about getting ourselves outside
Yes.
on a regular basis, especially during sunrise or sunup, whenever possible.
Yeah.
Blue blocking glasses.
Yeah.
I'm breaking my rules right now. I don't have them on. I'm looking at my computer screen, breaking all the rules. I normally, when I'm sitting here working, I have my glasses are blue blocking. They may not be to Rowdy's quality. I get it, but at least they do have the blue blocking in them. And most of the day, I'm wearing those to shield my eyes. What else? What's next?
So and on that topic, during the day, you could wear like a lighter yellow one if you're staring at a computer. There's also, I have software in my computer that just pulls out a little of the blue light, because you don't need to block every bit of blue light during the day. Like, you want to sort of have your environment be as close to the sun as possible. So those glasses look good because they were a lighter yellow. It's like those darker orange ones are really for post sunset. During the day, because there is blue light present in nature. It is part of the spectrum of what we need. It's never in isolation. So the blue light coming out of a screen is blue light in isolation. Whereas the blue light in the sun is mixed in with infrared and the whole the whole spectrum of all the colors.
So blue light in isolation is more of a problem than blue light by itself, and in the evening.
Yes.
When blue light doesn't naturally occur in high levels in nature.
Yes. So once the sun sets in nature, it's really all, if you want to be an absolute purist, the only light you would see after sunset would come from a fire. So a candle or a bonfire, and it would be low to the ground.
But you shorten your lifespan by 15 years because of breathing in the smoke.
Right. Okay. So there's trade-offs to everything.
It was a trade-off.
Okay. So maybe we'll just order blue blockers. So from a light perspective, that would be the absolute purists. But during the day, you can put the software on. You can wear the type of glasses you have. The most important thing is to go outside regularly. So people take smoke breaks or coffee breaks or whatever, any opportunity that you have to get your eyeballs and any skin you can outside, take it.
Yeah.
So unless it's pouring rain, I have my sunroof open in my car all the time.
Okay.
If when I'm working, even during the winter, I have the window cracked or I have the window down. In the morning in our kitchen, the sun comes into those. So I have all the windows down. So I'm getting the sun on my eyes, because once the light's filtered through a window, it's no good. The way that modern glass is made, it filters out all the stuff that we need. So it really has to be, even if you can't get outside, open the window. A screen is no problem, but the glass, there's a German photobiologist. He's called Dr. Wunsch, and he says, sunlight is junk light if it goes through the window.
Sunlight is junk light if it goes through the window. I like that. That's catchy. Okay. So, but some of your stuff you consider controversial, and nothing you've said so far sounds controversial. Sounds like great advice. I think it is new to a lot of people. So those of you listening that don't know this stuff, it's really powerful to get outside more, to get outside during the sunrise if possible, and sunset if possible. Again, these are fantastic habits, the blue light blockers. But what part of this, or what have you not told us yet, that you think people would have a hard time wrapping their head around or think is difficult to understand?
So you're right. Within alternative health and wellness circles, this is not controversial at all. And most people, when they hear it, they kind of go, oh yeah, that makes sense. Right? Like it makes sense on an intuitive level. The controversy comes because it goes against dogma that we've been taught for most of our lives, right? Like I grew up in an era from the time I was a teenager. I was told that I should have SPF 30 in all my makeup and all my face cream, and I should never leave the house without blocking the sun. The official line of the American Medical Association is like, no sun exposure is good, right? Like I think they haven't. I think they're going to change it soon, but it is still technically like zero. um,
Yeah.
then the other part of the controversy comes in. This is a little more high level, and I don't claim to understand the deep science of this. But up until very recently, the scientific consensus was that quantum mechanics and quantum physical processes do not occur in warm, wet environments, i.e., living bodies. Right. So people who studied quantum mechanics and learned all of these things about how crazy the subatomic world is, they also came to the conclusion, but that only happens in certain types of environments. And then it was only in the 20 teens, there was a physicist called Jim Al-Khalili and a biologist called Joe McFadden, and they started talking at a conference, and they were like, what if we started working together and see if we could solve the problems of each of our areas of science, right? So they started to do these experiments, and they basically proved that quantum mechanics does happen in living systems. And they wrote a book. It's called The Coming Age of Quantum Biology. It was published in like 2014.
Oh, I want to read it. That sounds
Yeah,
good.
the BBC has a documentary. It's on YouTube. It's free.
Oh,
On the
quantum biology.
Yeah, and they did a documentary with Jim Al-Khalili, and he explains all the experiments that they did and how they proved that it was mostly with animals, with birds, and how they used quantum processes to navigate and things like that. So there were no practical health benefits that came out of that work. Like, this is purely academic research, but it completely flipped the idea. Like, it's just a complete reversal of what most people thought was true up until less than 10 years ago. So most
Interesting.
classically trained physicists and biologists will argue with you. And in fact, Dr. Cruz was one of the first people who started to put this together. And he still fights with people when he goes on social media, and he'll come across
Yeah.
a classically trained physicist who says, no, that's impossible. And then, because then once you understand that it's not impossible, then the idea that light is interacting with our mitochondria every single second becomes much easier to swallow.
Okay, a couple thoughts here. Number one, I highly doubt the AMA is going to change anything in regards to sunscreen or anything like that. Now, I want to tell you, as much as I have issues with some mainstream points of view in health that I just think are scientifically invalid and easy to prove wrong.
Yeah.
I have come to have more patience with people who make policy. During COVID, we've had a lot of debate and people upset about mask mandates and vaccines and all of these issues. And I have tried to keep my moderate hat on of trying to understand the issues. And it's been really hard because we didn't get science to really understand the issues for a long time. And many people want to form opinions fast. They want to hear like one little study and form a strong opinion. Oh, another study comes out, form a strong opinion, then run with it for a long, long time. I was the opposite. And one of the things, as I discussed this and debated it and hashed it out with myself, one of the things I come to realize, and let's just use this on COVID policy, for example, because everyone's familiar with it. We've all been through it together.
Yeah.
There are some issues where we know for sure there are exceptions to the rule. There are some people who are perfectly healthy, have great immune systems, and COVID is going to be nothing more than a mild cold or asymptomatic. We know that. The science tells us that. We know that. But the public policy official can't make policy for them. They have to make policy for the most vulnerable, right? Because you can't say, okay, we're going to have a policy now. We want to do social distancing, wear the mask, do this, do that. But if you're super healthy and taking glutathione and supplements and eating healthy foods, taking your vitamins, then you're exempt.
Yeah.
They can't do that because then a lot of people who aren't doing that. And also, we're not very good at being honest with ourselves. There are many people who think they're really healthy and doing a great job, and they're not. And sometimes there's the opposite. I see that actually quite a bit with our weight loss group. We have people right now, we have quite a lot of people on a weight loss program with us.
Yeah.
And oftentimes they're superstars of health. It's just that they've gained some weight, but they really understand. They understand how to lose it. They understand nutrition. They understand what good, healthy carbs, fats, and proteins are. They understand how to create a fitness regimen and so on. They've just lost their way temporarily.
Yeah.
And so it's both ways. So
yeah.
the way I have come to see it now is I try to be more forgiving of the poor people who have to make social policy for millions. And also, you know, to be less pragmatic about my own views. So do I feel like wearing a mask in Costco is going to protect me from anything? I don't. But if there's an elderly couple walking by that feels like they're worried, they really believe they can get COVID from me, right? And for all I know, they can, right? I'm happy to wear the mask so they feel more comfortable, right? And so anyways, I'm not trying to justify. I guess what I'm saying is, with all that going on and with these people having to make public policy and health policy, I make my own policy.
Yeah.
And so, but I try to do it without being mad at them, because I've coming to understand more why it's really difficult to make the policy. So the way I look at it is I'm my own best health experiment.
Yeah.
Right. And I'm sure you look at it the same way. And so that was probably a long, rambling little pitch there, but I think it's important, because in health we can get so animated, we can get so angry at things we disagree with, and things like that. But at the end of the day, there are often things that we can be cutting edge on, that we can be a thought leader on, and a lot of people can think we're wrong, but guess what? If it works for us, we're just going to do it anyway.
Yes. Yeah, I think that's fair, and I think that's true, right? And I also have a lot of compassion for people who have to make policy. There's just there are so many sort of competing pressures, I think, in that position, which is why I think, like, where I come down is I need to be free to make my own choices, like, which is right what you just said, and to do my own research.
Agreed.
Right.
Agreed.
So if I was left to, and as you say, like, the policy is there, like, to protect people who aren't going to do that. So, but if I am going to do that, then I would like the freedom to be able to apply the fruits of my research in the best way that I see fit for myself and my
That's
family.
right. So when the policy becomes communism, that's when we really have a problem with it. And take the example of sunscreen. The reason why I don't think we're going to see any changes is because it just takes a few idiots. So they relax the standard on sunscreen. So someone goes, oh, cool. The AMA says sunscreen isn't as great as we thought it was. And so they go outside, they go on their vacation to Acapulco. They don't put on any sunscreen. They hang out by the pool all day long. And then they come back and sue the AMA because they got a 3rd-degree sunburn and it ruined their trip to Acapulco.
Yes. Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And so they got to make policy. They're trying to protect themselves. They're trying to protect the public.
Yeah.
And they're doing it for a broad range of people. And here's where it really gets sad. Most people in our country now are unhealthy. It's not that most are healthy. Unfortunately, most are overweight.
Right.
Many have chronic illnesses. Many are headed to their first heart attack. Many do not have good health habits. And so this is where we really, you and I as health professionals, really become disconnected, because we're trying to help people leave the herd of the standard American diet and what's acceptable to policymakers and the FDA and the AMA. We're saying that's fine. Let them do their thing. But if you don't want to have your first heart attack, if you want to get your health back, if you want to reclaim, none of that stuff is going to do it for you. It's broad general policy, right? And so let's get into more specifics. Or do you have anything else to say on that topic? I know it's a really interesting topic.
Yeah. I mean, just what I said before is I think that it is, I do not think it's possible to be healthy in the modern world without being a strong advocate and researcher of your own personal health. If we just say, because I tried this when I had my kids, I was like, you know what? I was all like into health and stuff in my 20s, and then I had my children. I was like, you know what? I'm just going to go with the flow. And you cannot. Like
Yeah.
if we abdicate our personal health decisions to, as you were just saying, to policy or to to whatever the medical system is focused on, we will not stay healthy. It is just not possible unless we live on a farm
And the proof is in the
and
pudding.
we get up to
The
take care
proof
of
is
the
in the
chickens.
pudding. 60% of Americans are clinically obese. Obesity
Yeah.
being defined by the American Heart Association as more than 20 pounds overweight. 60% are unhealthy, and that obesity is leading to shortened lifespan, all types of chronic disease, too high of inflammation, that heart attack that we're talking about. And so, yeah, the norm
Yeah.
is not healthy, which is very
Yeah.
sad. That's the world we're in. I totally agree with everything you said. And my wording of it is, you know, my own science experiment. I'm not happy with the status quo science on health and nutrition. As a matter of fact, if you look at what the government has published on health from the 4 food groups in the 70s, which was complete trash, to the food pyramid, which is completely upside down, to
It's good. It's just backwards.
it's yeah, take the sweets
No,
off of the
it's
top of the
not good.
pyramid and then turn it upside
Yeah.
down, and it starts to make sense to a health professional. Yeah. So what else? I want to stay on your topic here better, of light therapy, quantum health.
Yeah.
What are some of the other real takeaways that you've applied with your family?
Yeah. And so it's all really connected. And I think that, so most of my background is more in executive coaching, like, and like the question that I find really powerful to ask people is like, if you continue doing what you're doing now in this area, like where are you going to be? Like, where are you going to end up? Right. And
Right.
so if we can think about that in terms of how you're doing in your job or your relationship or what you're eating or whatever. So I'm like, okay, so I'm going to ask myself that question when it comes to light. Right. And if it's like, if I keep doing what I'm doing, and what I'm doing is seeing a phone first thing in the morning, having electronics in my bedroom, having bright lights on, artificial light at night, right? Like I am guaranteeing all of those bad health outcomes that you just discussed. Like it's inevitable. And when you hear, so many of the doctors that I have interviewed who have become converts to this, so many of them started out with their own health issues, right? And there's one in particular, Dr. Jay Montgomery. He's an ophthalmologist, and he did CrossFit. He didn't eat sugar. He was like he was a doctor. He lived out in the country. He did all the things. And he got to the point with his health where he couldn't get off the couch. He was
Wow.
considering he was going to have to go on disability. And
What
all
the
of the
heck?
doctors that he consulted, the next best option that they could think of for him was brain surgery. Like that was sort of where his profession got, that was their best option for him.
Yeah.
And that was the moment where he, was like, there has to be something else. And he started learning about light. And he
Okay.
started to apply all of these things that we just talked about, like going outside first thing in the morning, blocking artificial light at night, being outside as much as possible during the day. And slowly over time, he weaned off his medications, and he's now completely healthy. He traced
Mm,
that change in his health back to when in his practice, they switched from paper records to electronic records. And he spent his entire day on a screen or looking through a thing with it. Like he was blasting his eyes with blue light all day long, every day. And so he's also obviously adjusted how he works in order to do that, right? But so
yeah.
so many people are, having a chronic illness where there's no answer, right? Just like, I feel kind of tired all the time. And it's like, not bad
Terrible.
enough that your primary care doctor has an answer for you, but still is really lowering your quality of life. It's like, it's really worth doing a little diagnostic on your light intake. Right? Because
So
Dr. Montgomery, I use that example because it's very extreme, but even people who just feel a little tired, a little sluggish, a little depressed, do a diagnostic on your light intake and what's changed in the last few years.
okay, so help me do a personal diagnostic then. I feel like I'm pretty good in the morning. So what I do, I told you about my morning routine, and I walk the dog, I meditate, I exercise, and I avoid social media for multiple reasons until after I do all that. And so like my morning time is really precious, and I do get outside, and I'm happy with my routine. But in the evening, I think is probably where it's worse, because my wife, I'll be honest, my wife and I, we love TV. We like movies. We like shows.
Yeah.
We end our day almost every day on the couch, relaxing and sitting together and watching some show. And we enjoy that. Okay. So we usually have the light on.
Yeah.
Probably not the right kind of light. I don't know. We have the TV on.
Yeah.
And that's how we end our day. And so I do understand that manufacturers are doing a better job with blue light. I understand that modern televisions, computers, etc., like this Macintosh computer I'm looking at right now, Apple supposedly drastically reduced the blue light in the last 2 or 3 years in the computers. I haven't looked too much into it. I don't know what that means. I don't know how much it's down, whatever. So I do wear my glasses, like I said, normally. But the evening is probably the worst. I'm probably breaking all the rules in the evening. I do walk the dog around sunset.
Yes.
So I am outside around sunset. So I got that one going.
Yeah. So your day sounds really good. Being outside at sunset is amazing, right? It has similar to being outside at sunrise. It starts to tell your brain that it's nighttime. And the thing is, the darkness is just as important as the light, because there are certain things that your brain needs complete darkness in order functions, that it needs complete darkness in order to do properly. So once the sun has set, if we expose ourselves to bright light, we are interfering with those functions. Okay. So here's what we do. We have our house came with like LED ceiling lights, right? Once I get to like 3:00 in the afternoon during the winter, those are off always. Then we have lower lamps that have incandescent light bulbs.
Okay.
So those are like the light bulbs with like the yellow tinge, like the old fashioned kind, right? Like that's the other thing. Over the last few years, we've changed to these LED bulbs, which are like compared to the softer, warmer ones that
I thought it was the opposite.
I
thought the LEDs were a softer light, better on the eyes and whatnot. No?
No. I mean, it has to do with the color spectrum. So if you have an LED, a red LED bulb, that's going to be different. But if you have a bright white LED bulb, no, you don't want to.
This is my home office / gym, that podcast room right here, and I'm breaking all the rules. I'm looking at you through my computer. I've got a light on here, a podcasting light on my face to light up for podcasting, and I've got 4 LEDs up in the ceiling here behind me. So I do have a window beside me, but the German doctor said that's crap, so I'm screwed. I'm like, getting.
Okay, but here's the thing: it's still daytime, so it's actually not that big a deal. Like even the LEDs, if it's like because we're in the winter, before 3:00 in the afternoon, it's probably not that big a deal. You might want to crack the window because the photons can fly around. But I mean, and that's the thing too, right? Photons don't go in a straight line, so even having a window open a crack increases the healthiness of a room.
Interesting. Cool.
Yes, so to speak.
Okay.
So as the basically you want your interior environment to reflect as much as possible what's going on outside. So it's
Okay.
bright outside during the day. So if it's bright out, you actually want it to be bright inside during the day, even if it is through an LED bulb. As it starts to get dimmer outside, you want your inside environment to reflect that. So as it gets close to sunset, I turn off the brighter lights. Then once the sun has set, we switch to incandescent bulbs. So those are, they got hard to get because they got outlawed because they're not as environmentally friendly, but they're you can buy them like an Edison bulb, or it's those ones that have like kind of an orange glow to them. So we switch to those after sunset. You don't want them overhead. Rudy Nassif actually talks about this because even the angle of the light, right? Like you want it to be as similar as possible. So lamps with incandescent bulbs, you turn those on in the evening, so you can still see everything's fine. And I too love to watch a movie with my husband on the couch at the end of the day, or a TV show. And so we have our dark orange blue blockers. And so before we turn the TV on, we put those on.
Do you use Rowdy's or a different brand, or what do you like?
Yeah, Viva Rays are great. Viva Rays are amazing because he's really perfected. They have 3 different lenses that you can change throughout the day. So he's really perfected making sure that the light that you do want is still getting through.
I told him I was going to buy some right after our episode, and I still haven't.
Okay, I'll send you a link.
I think he even sent me a discount code and everything.
Yeah.
Send me a link, and then I'll text him, hey, I finally bought your glasses.
Okay.
I bought them through Meredith. Meredith finally got me over the edge, and I bought them.
Yeah. Well, his are great because you only need one frame and you can change the lenses throughout the day. Which is important because you really don't want to be blocking stuff. Like if you wore blue blockers in the morning, you get tired.
Here's the thing, okay? Habits like that. Here's what I worry about. Like, I have adopted a fair amount of good habits, but there's other good habits I know I should do that I just don't do, and I'm just not gonna do. Okay. Yeah. And honestly, I think this is a little bit of my hang up with the glasses.
Yeah.
I picture myself getting the glasses and then just kind of not using them, or losing one of the lenses, or forgetting it's time to change lenses. And I will buy them. You send me the link, I'll buy them. I'm going to try it. But I can't tell you how many health habits I've started that I'm just not going to sustain. And I wonder, how's it been for you? Are you doing that habit pretty well?
Well, it's like you were saying earlier, right? Like there's people who know how to be healthy. They just kind of fall off the trail every once in a while. Like
we all have some limitation in that.
It's all like that. And I am not a super self-disciplined person. I think it's hilarious that I'm in the health space because I'm really I'm not that person. But what I have found is that when something becomes a habit, it's not that big a deal. And I think your point is great about the glasses. And even Rudy himself is like, you don't have to have them. Like I mostly wear the glasses at night when I'm watching TV. I have the iris on my computer during the day. Now, some people find that they really notice an eye strain if they are working on a laptop for hours and hours. And those people really benefit from having a daytime lens that they put on. And I know people who do that. So I think it's all a matter of, once you start paying attention, you start to notice oh yeah, I actually don't feel that good if I've been working. I'm starting to get a bit of a headache if I'm staring at my computer for that long.
Yeah.
So you have the glasses there, you throw them on. And, my husband and I and my kids against their will, but we're now at the point now, we will not turn the TV on until we've got our blue blockers on. But the rest of the house, we just changed our light bulbs. And so we don't really think about it, right? We tried to get it to the point where we don't have to be focused on it all the time. It's just sort of what happens.
Okay.
And then the last part. So in our lamps beside our bed for reading at night, those light bulbs are red, not incandescent, not orange. They're just pure red. So we either have on our blue blockers or just red light.
Okay, now this is an area you'll be proud of me. You'll be proud of me. I don't go into my bedroom till I'm ready to go to sleep. There's no,
Nice.
like, the light is on to brush my teeth. As a matter of fact, I even started a new habit. I'm a huge fan of intermittent fasting, right?
Yeah.
And one of the habits I started doing was brushing my teeth after dinner, because it also helps
Mm,
me avoid any temptation that might
yeah.
come later, right? Because I'm
Yeah.
like, okay, I'm ready for bed. It's kind of a good feeling, right?
That's
Because when
smart.
I get tired at night and it's time to go
Yeah.
to sleep, I just want to go get in bed,
Yeah.
right? And so that little habit of brushing my teeth after dinner so I don't eat anything else, I don't have much problem with that anymore, but it used to be hard for me. But anyways, it means I'm ready. So I can just go in the bedroom. So I have a lamp by my bed. It almost never gets turned on.
Nice.
Is go in,
Oh,
and we
that's
also,
perfect. Yeah.
yeah, yeah, yeah. So I'm good on that one. I just got to work
Yeah.
on the whole right before that
Yes.
thing.
And so if you put on the when you put on the blue blockers to watch TV, leave them on until you've turned off all the lights. Like you really don't want any standard light bulb hitting your eyeball at all at night.
Okay. Okay.
Or phone or anything. So it's it's very similar intermittent fasting and it all works together, right? But like you're just like, oh,
Yes, it
I
does.
just had a couple bites. It's like,
You need to
then
go
you're
to
not
my
intermittent
website.
fasting anymore, right? It's the same thing. It's like, oh, I just looked at my phone for a minute. It's like,
I want you to do me a favor. Go to my website,
okay.
dairobi.com. There's a resources page. And on that page, there's a document called the virtuous cycle.
Mhm.
Okay.
Nice. Okay.
And it touches on this a little bit. But I would love, Meredith, if you would read that and tell me how you'd improve it. Because I actually got a couple ideas that I want to do to improve that download already. But it's how
Okay.
I show people how to live our health habits that we teach over a
Yeah.
24-hour period of time. But you have said two or three things here today that I think I could easily add to that graphic that would improve it.
Okay.
It shows a 24-hour cycle, and
Yeah.
I'd love to get your input on what we might do differently in that regard, if you're willing.
Oh, I'd be happy to. Thanks for
Yeah,
asking.
yeah, yeah.
Sure.
And I'll put a little blurb on the bottom, uh, Meredith Oke contributor,
Oh, no,
learn
it's
more about
fine.
light, whatever, right? I'd be happy to. You give me some good ideas for that. We'll put your hashtag on there, whatever you want. But I think it's important. I think I touch on it, but I'm not a light expert like you. So for me, in that cycle, I talk about nutrition, we talk about
Mhm.
intermittent fasting, we touch on social media. But some of the things you said, I think really would be great additions to add light management to that cycle. If you're up for it.
Absolutely. Sure.
Okay. Okay. Well, listen, I kept you way longer than I had budgeted for, and I hope you're okay with going over. But
Absolutely. Yeah. So it's
okay, so I'm just going to ask one
lovely.
more question then,
Okay.
and that is that what I have found is almost all of us have downtimes in our lifetimes where,
Mhm.
and I'm not talking about, I'm talking physically now. Like, of course, we can have them in all manner of ways, but there's
Mhm.
times where we kind of get off the rails of our own plan, put on some weight maybe, or we were exercising regularly and we stopped, or we added a new bad habit that we never should have added. And as human beings, we're up and down. But I found that almost everyone has some epiphany along the way where they're on one of those troughs, a down point, but a mentor or a friend or a book or a quote or a tweet or something hits them that is so profound and meaningful that they make a major step up from this one thing or one event or one thing that was said, or one, maybe it was even an embarrassing moment or whatever. I don't know. And I'm wondering if you've had one of those, a personal experience that you'd be willing to share with us before I let you go.
Yeah, sure. It's a beautiful question. I've had yeah, I've had several of those and as you said different areas of life, but I think the one that most impacted my health, my physical health was so I mentioned, I had chronic fatigue and I think what a lot of women do is we tell it we have this thought in our head that we don't even notice is there and it's some version of well, oh, it's not that bad.
Hmm.
It's not that bad. And I had a very good friend who had to go through chemo for breast cancer. And she was telling me how her life had changed while she was doing these treatments. And she was like, yeah, she's like, I really have to be very careful about how I schedule my day and schedule my activities because I can't do more than two things without needing to lie down.
Hmm.
And that was how I'd been living for years. And I just thought it was and
Oh,
I just thought it wasn't that bad. It was normal. And having this woman who I really loved and respected, and she did lots of great stuff in the world, having her say that that was one of the hardest things for her to figure out during her chemo treatment, I just was like, "Oh my god. This
wow.
isn't normal, is it? This isn't normal." And I truly didn't understand how not normal it was, until my friend shared that with me. Um, and that really, really helped to motivate me to keep pushing to feel better. Because I thought
I
if
love
she had
that. And in this case, it was serendipitous. She wasn't even meaning to change her
no.
life. She was just sharing how awful
Yeah,
it was to go through
yeah,
something that you were putting up with and telling yourself it was
yeah,
normal or okay.
yeah, yeah.
Crazy.
One of the many, many moments where I realized, like, why it's just so good to have relationships, right? People when you
Right.
talk to people, those moments you were talking about, they just happen because people share. We share our
Yeah.
experiences with each other, and you never know how someone's impacting you or vice versa, so
Well, fantastic. Thank you so much for sharing that with me and our audience today. And Meredith, how do people learn more about you or dive deeper into this topic so they can improve their health through your methods?
yeah, so I think, we're on Instagram at Quantum Health TV or quantumhealth.tv on the internet, and, yeah, I bring together, like, I've considered myself a light expert. I bring together the real experts who teach on this and coach on this, and, we have little videos that explain it and a little just yeah, it's just, we're just offering a way to make this real for people because 'cause they're like, "What? Are you serious? Is this true?" So, we've created some resources that can really help.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much. And for those of you watching, Quantum Health .tv, Meredith's hashtag is in her name plate, I guess we would call it, their virtual nameplate under her face. You can see that there too. And Meredith, again, thank you so much for coming on the show.
Thank you for having me, Dave. It was just such a pleasure to speak to you. Really appreciate it.
Thank you. Same with me. It's been a wonderful interview, and I've learned a lot, and I'm inspired to keep moving down this track. Like I said, I'm not there yet. I still have weaknesses in my plan, but I agree. I just agree. I just think it's a really great thing for us to pay attention to, something that is under the radar that really shouldn't be.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
thanks for sharing. For those of you
Pleasure.
listening, yeah, thanks again. This is Dave Sherwin wishing you health and success.
Thanks, Dave.